Welcome to Station, our Blue Jays series recap show here on Organized Chaos Sports. After a torrid couple weeks versus AL East opponents, the Jays headed to the Twin Cities for a 3-game weekend series versus Minnesota. Could the Jays right the ship and head home on a positive note? Stay tuned to find out more. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you enjoy. Station to Station, your Blue Jays series recap show, back with Dustin, following the 3-game series against the Minnesota Twins. Dustin, I wouldn't say redemption, but I think coming out of this series, we felt a little bit better.
It's a step in the right direction. I feel like they've got to take a lot more, but you take it one step at a time, one game at a time, and hopefully there's more of this to come.
Well, the results of this series were definitely better, but throughout the series, I think we saw some similar themes and occurrences that have unfortunately led the Jays down a not so good road. But let's talk about how we are coming into the series. So the Jays' record coming into this series is 26-25. They are in last place in the American League East. Still above 500, but in the basement. We did have a roster move on the morning of the first game where Tyler Heineman was called up to basically replace Danny Jansen as Jansen hurt his groin during the Rays series, basically just running to first. And he is on the 10-day IL now. Just to note, Santiago Espinal remains on the injured list, and it looks like he'll be expected back sometime in June. Our lineup for game number 1, across the outfield, left to right, Dalton Varsho, Kevin Kiermaier, and George Springer. Across the infield, third to first, we have Matt Chapman, Bo Bichette, Whit Merrifield, and Brandon Belt. Our catcher, as Jansen is out, is Alejandro Kirk. And our DH this particular game was Vladimir Guerrero. Our pitching matchup for game number 1, Kevin Gausman versus Louis Varland. Gausman comes in this game 2-3 with a 3.14 ERA and a 1.08 WHIP. Louis Varland gets this game underway with his first pitch at 8:10 p.m. And the Jays actually start well and get a couple base runners. But a common theme that we've been seeing of late, I guess, reared its ugly head. And the inning finishes on a double play where Vladimir Guerrero essentially hits an infield single, which starts a very strange double play where Springer gets he basically gets tagged out at third when he's just leaning too far. And following that, Vladimir Guerrero, I guess, was caught wandering off of first, and he gets tagged out trying to get back to the bag. So, Dustin, game number 1, and there's more base running errors.
2 really bad decisions. I can understand Springer to a certain degree, right? I mean, he's trying to lean. He's trying to get that first run. And he just got caught out. Maybe didn't anticipate the shortstop, looking at him. But Vladimir's just, I don't know how he's off the bag that far when Springer's getting run down like that. I don't think he was ever making it to second there. So, just, I don't know, bonehead moves.
Yeah, you really have to wonder. And, as I mentioned, worst case scenario here where, we have 2 runners on base looking to get the game off to a positive start. And we end the top of the first with the donut. All right, bottom of the first, Gausman gets himself into a little bit of a jam, but he gets out of it with a flyout and 2 strikeouts. So little speed wobble in the bottom of the first there, but Kevin Gausman is able to pitch out of it. Top of the third, we have our first scoring of the game, where Kevin Kiermaier hits a solo home run to right field on a 1-2 count. Springer then doubles down the right field line, little squibbler, and Bo follows that with a 2-run home run to straightaway center field, and that inning ends 3-0. Dustin, the one thing I noted from this was all these hits happened with 2 outs.
Yeah, I mean that's been a fairly common um, time to score for the Blue Jays, it seems. Um, I don't know what it is about 2 outs. Maybe they're just changing their approach and just, looking to hit anything. And I think maybe they got to learn from that and use that approach at every at bat, no matter the outs.
Well, I would definitely agree. With 2 outs doesn't really seem to be the Jays' problem, and I definitely think we'll see this play out throughout this series.
Yeah,
Now,
no doubt. And I gotta say, Bo Bichette is a stud. I mean, that home run was just demolished. Um, every passing game, he's the one that we need to sign long term.
I would tend to agree in that Bo seems to be our standout of late. Now, I am careful not to get ahead of myself with some recency bias, but Rob actually asked on a previous episode who I would sign, and I essentially said I would sign both, so I didn't answer the question. I think the answer right now is I think without a doubt, Bo Bichette. He is really a top level player, and he's playing a premium position.
Exactly. Yeah, I would have said the same thing.
So that inning ends 3-0. And there isn't really any other scoring in this game until the bottom of the sixth, where Minnesota gets a single run back following 2 walks and an RBI single. Following that RBI single, we have our first pitching change for the Jays, where Eric Swanson comes on to replace Kevin Gausman. Gausman's pitching line in this game: 5.1 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 5 walks, and 8 strikeouts. Dustin, you know, seems like a pretty tidy outing for Gosman, but not his finest outing, but definitely not his worst.
Yeah, for sure. I think that you know he he's been kind of a steady horse for us, and uh, we needed him out there to put up some zeros, and he did that.
Well, that particular inning definitely had some, I guess, fireworks as Swanson comes on with 2 on base, promptly walks his first batter he faces. So it is now the bases loaded, and Swanson manages to get out of the jam. And I should add, there was actually 1 out at the time when he came in. And he gets out of the jam with a strikeout and a ground out. So Eric Swanson, that high leverage situation, gets out of it for us.
I'm falling in love with Swanson in the pen. I think he's quickly becoming one of the more reliable guys out there, and I'm never too nervous when he's on the bump.
All right. We have a couple pitching changes. Bottom of the seventh, Tim Mayza replaces Swanson. Bottom of the eighth, Nate Pearson replaces Tim Mayza. And then bottom of the ninth, Jordan Romano comes on to replace Nate Pearson, and he gets his 11th save of the season. And the Jays win this game 3-1. Our winning pitcher, Kevin Gausman, who is now 3-3, a 3.03 ERA, and his WHIP is 1.13. Losing pitcher, Louis Varland. Dustin, I thought that Gosman's had a lot of bad luck in terms of his run support and just really things kind of out of his control going wrong. But he picks up a W here, and he didn't have to go 8 scoreless.
Yeah, he hasn't been as unlucky as he's been in the past. There's been a little bit of it here, but I think he's got a good approach. He's thrown some nasty pitches out there, and he looks healthy. So let's keep it running. I mean, I'm happy with his performances, and honestly, I think that the whole pitching staff, at least for this game, kind of just was what you want to see out there. Swanson, Meza, Pearson, Romano, they all kind of did their job. The whole bullpen putting up zeros. It's that's what you want to see.
Dustin, another thing to note for game number one on Friday, there was a players only meeting that went down before the game.
Yeah, if you haven't heard, basically the players only meeting happened. They've been struggling, and then I think something happened where media was talking to Schneider, and Schneider said to the media, to the press, oh yeah, the guys had a players only meeting, blah 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 blah. Just kind of mentioned it sort of offhandedly. Later, Matt Chapman was being asked by the press corps. So we heard about this players only meeting, and he says something along the lines of, "Oh, well, I don't know how you heard that." Right. And so it seemed like kind of like a little bit of a side remark towards Schneider in terms of, you know, that
Like a
was supposed to be,
disconnect.
yeah, like almost like some early indications that people are sort of talking about now that Schneider's maybe not lost the room, but he's, maybe there's a little bit of undercurrent of displeasure with his managing.
Well, I, I'm of the opinion that, and players only meetings, well, I'm sure they have some effect. They are more for the media, like you even just being mentioned, it's kind of just throwing them a bone. Now, the players may not have appreciated that. I, you know, I don't really get the sense that John Schneider's in over his head. There's been a few times where a few head scratching moves. Definitely when he went to the mound
Mm.
on the Saturday game against the Orioles, and then didn't realize that Manoah needed to be pulled at that point. That was definitely a mistake. But what did he do after the game? He basically said
He
that
owned
it
it.
was dumb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of blame to be spread around on this team. As we've already referenced in the first game, base running was again not very good, and throughout this series, it wasn't very good. I don't think it was very good in any game. And Mr. Matt Chapman, who had an incredible April, he has been essentially as cold as ice in May. So
True.
I'm not singling him out or anything, but uh, really I think the only player that probably has a right to be upset about maybe this getting out if he didn't want it to would probably be Bo Bichette, as he's the offensive leader of this team. But other than that, I don't really see a reason why uh, they should be upset about this, other than the fact maybe it was explicitly communicated that they didn't want this to go out, or
Yeah.
maybe it was some kind of unspoken kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to read a lot into it now, but the Jays are not doing very well. So people
Yeah.
are going to start adding these things up in their head.
And these kinds of things, these kinds of chatters always happens when teams are losing, and it happens especially when good teams are losing. Teams that are underperforming, beyond their expectations, and that's where you look at the manager. We don't know what was said in the meeting. We don't know how Schneider is in the clubhouse necessarily, or whether this is any meat on this bone at all. It's just something I think that it's an interesting tidbit, and we'll have to track it going forward.
Well, and it sounds like people are running with it, which is standard Toronto
They're going to do
sport.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
standard Toronto sports media.
sure.
But um, The one thing that we didn't really discuss in the I guess the state of the season episode, and something that is really beyond John Snyder's control is really how well the Baltimore Orioles and the Tampa Bay Rays are playing. So John Schneider can only, really control the game that he's managing. I think you basically mentioned that a manager isn't really expected to win any games, but you don't want him to lose any games. And I don't really, I don't really feel like he's really lost any games to the Jays. There's been a few, head scratchers, as I mentioned before. I think running Jimmy Garcia out constantly seems to be, somewhat of a head
Mm.
scratcher, is not having a good season. But you know, I don't think the Jays expected the Rays and the Orioles to be really be playing as well as they have been, and really making, you know, really the Jays look this bad, right? And they have been bad and at moments, but I don't think going into our episode last week, they were still leading the majors in hits, right? So
Yeah, no, you're right. And the problem has been that when they've been bad against the AL East, getting swept by Boston, getting swept by the Orioles, 3 out of 4 losing against the New Yorks. I mean, and then, you know, the 3 out of 4 in Tampa. It's, you know, when they've been bad against the AL East, and that's doubly impactful in terms of the
so
standings.
it's doubly impactful. Obviously, there are division teams, but also the fact there are less games against these teams this year,
Right.
so less of a chance to make them up. Dustin, against the AL East in April, the Jays were 4-2. In May, they were 2-13 for a
Yes,
total of 6-16. So
that's not
uh,
acceptable.
it's not acceptable. But this is the toughest division in baseball, so they're
Sure.
getting essentially sandbagged by what I would consider the best teams around. So I don't know. I think only time will tell. If those teams keep playing at that clip, as well as where the Jays, do end up in all this.
And maybe just one last point before we move to the next game is, maybe that's something that if you're going to have a more balanced schedule, maybe it's you just have American League, National League, top 6 go to the playoffs, something like that.
Well, and that would be essentially more similar to other North American sports where the top eight make it.
Mm.
Aside of the NHL, which they have a stupid playoff format anyway, that league's run by children. But yes, if you're gonna have playoffs and everybody is going to play everyone, you should really have a top six, and who knows, maybe maybe that's something that in the future baseball will go to, where there'll be like a single table in each league, and that's how we'll go. I highly doubt that anytime soon.
Yeah.
Baseball is a very traditional sport, and I just don't really see that happening. But who knows if the Yankees or the Red Sox end up in last or second last place and miss the playoffs,
Hmm.
maybe three, 4, 5 years in a row, mm, they're gonna start. They might start squawking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And money talks. So, all right, moving on to game two. Our lineup for this game: left to right in the outfield, Dalton Varsho, Kevin Kiermaier, and George Springer. Around the horn, third to first, Matt Chapman, Bo Bichette, Whit Merrifield, and Vladimir Guerrero. Tyler Heineman is in at catcher, and our DH is Brandon Belt. Pitching matchup for this one: Chris Bassett versus Pablo Lopez. Bassett comes into this game 5-3 with a 3.03 ERA and a 1.04 WHIP. This game gets underway at 2:11 p.m. Eastern time, and Bo Bichette wastes no time crushing a solo home run to left field.
Uh, Bo doing both things. I mean, this guy's a stud. I say, I'll say it again. It's amazing watching him. watching him play. It's a pleasure, and I hope that he, again, I hope he stays around. God, we need him. Where would this team be right now without Bo Bichette, right?
I shudder to think where they would be. Right, this game turns into a bit of a tug of war. So following that top of the first, the at the bottom of the first, the Twins actually score 3 runs, and that inning ends 3-1. Just something to note in this particular inning that I don't think anyone realized at the time. Kevin Kiermaier, he eventually leaves the game in the bottom of the second, but he actually injures his back on a throw and basically had to leave. It didn't appear in the series again and is day to day with a back injury.
Yeah, this a little rough, honestly. I mean, he's been a pretty important spark plug, um, not only offensively but defensively for the team. And I guess we'll see later what that might cost us.
So in that bottom of the second, the Twins add another run. Game is now 4-1. Top of the third, the Jays come back. There's a Tyler Heineman walk, a George Springer single, and then Bo Bichette doing more Bo Bichette things with a 2 RBI triple, and that inning ends 4-3. Top of the fourth now, Cavan Biggio steps to the plate and crushes a towering solo home run to center field on an 0-2 count, and that inning ends 4-4. Dustin, Cavan Biggio shown a little bit the last few days.
Yeah, we just got done talking about Kevin Biggio and how bad he is, but I did say, earlier that, every once in a while he can run into one, and when he does, he can hit it far. I wish he would put it together because you can see glimpses of this power that he's got sometimes.
Well, and he is getting some playing time now. Rob indicated that he thought that was a bit of an issue. I think that's a catch-22 because if you're not playing well, you don't really deserve playing time. But he is being thrust into a position where he is playing more with Santiago Espinal being injured, and so far, I don't know. I'm still lukewarm on him, maybe even cold, but he has had a couple good swings in whatever the last 6 games.
Yeah, I mean, he's a ball player, but we'll see. We'll wait and see. I'm not too hopeful.
Bottom of the fifth now. There are 2 Twins homers, and they take the lead 7-4. Dustin, I think this was in some ways the story of the game where Dalton Varsho, you know what? I'm appreciating him out in the outfield. He has had some struggles at the plate, but Dalton Varsho, unfortunately, was at least in the case of the first home run, uh, the ball,
That was rough.
yeah, gets out to center field, and he looks like he's in position, and the ball just goes off the edge of his glove and over the fence. In the first case, the second case, he is in position, and in that case, he actually gets his glove on it, but the ball is over the fence. And I don't think I back to back, like I guess back to back scoring plays. I don't think I've quite seen something of that sort.
This is what I was referencing earlier with the Kiermaier injury costing us. I mean, I gotta believe Kiermaier makes both those catches, to be honest. Now look, Dalton Varsho is a good outfielder, and no one's going to take that away from him. But you know, maybe he's not a center fielder. Let's say.
Well, he's not is a center. He's not a center fielder with height. That's what he's
Right.
not. So
Yeah.
I think he
That's
can
good.
cover ground. But him pulling balls back over the fence probably not going to happen very often. I would suggest that Kevin Kiermaier probably would have made both these plays. Should if he was actually playing this game, it's possible. Who knows? It was possible he could have been scratched anyway for just some rest. But Yeah, a couple unfortunate plays. I feel like if he got that second, it would have felt like somewhat of redemption. But Dalton Varsho's going to come. I don't think he's going to let it affect him, and he's going to come back the next game and probably lay out for a diving catch or
Yeah,
make a nice throw. He's pretty steady out there and makes the plays that need to be made.
he certainly does.
All right, following those two homers, Anthony Bass replaces Chris Bassett. Chris Bassett's pitching line for this 4.0 innings pitch, 9 hits, 7 earned runs, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts. Dustin didn't quite have his best stuff in this game.
You could say that. He's an up and down pitcher for me. Um, you know, Sometimes I think that he just kind of loses sight. I don't know. I don't know the what the problem is when he's off. I mean, when he's on, he's just so rock solid. But when he's off, it's like there's no pitch working for him.
Following that, bottom of the seventh, Adam Simber comes on to replace Anthony Bass, and there is another twin solo home run. Bottom of the eighth, Jimmy Garcia replaces Adam Simber, and he gives up another solo home run. So really, at this point, the game looks pretty much out of reach. But top of the ninth, the Jays do make it close, and I think threaten. Where Varsho hits a 2-run home run to right field, where Whit Merrifield scores on, and Bo singles and scores Kevin Biggio following that. But the game ends 9-7. The Jays lose. Winning pitcher Pablo Lopez, losing pitcher Chris Bassett. Chris Bassett falls to 5-4. His ERA is now 3.80, and his WHIP is now 1.15.
Tough loss. I mean, this is what I was talking about when we were talking about the state of the season and just winnable games that seem just barely out of reach. It's tough to I know they came back at the end to make it look good, but even then, I think there was a lot that they gave up 7 and 8. I think Simber gave up a run and Garcia gave up a run, and the game was much closer before those runs. If the bullpen held it out, then this 3 runs in the ninth would have carried the victory.
Well, I think I'll give Simber a little bit of a pass as he's coming back from an injury, but Jimmy Garcia is not having a good year.
Six
And
four seven ERA is abysmal.
yeah, it's not good, and I'm I'm looking to see if there's going to be some kind of change because Schneider, we did say in the past segment about we didn't really fault him for much. I would say that constantly running Jimmy Garcia out there when he's not looked very sharp has not been really a good decision on his part. Saying that, I do think the bullpen depth is not what you would hope, but Jimmy Garcia has made a lot of appearances, so maybe with a bit more rest and a bit more time in between appearances, he'll look a bit sharper.
Yeah, I think they should be moving him down sort of in the leverage ladder, let's say, and then maybe moving Pearson and some others. Maybe Simber's just coming off the injury, as you say, but he's been pretty solid for them in recent years. So we'll see about him, but definitely Pearson, move him up a little bit in the leverage column.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Nate Pearson has shown himself to be pretty good to start the season. He hasn't. I don't think he's been given too many difficult situations, but I think he's done what he's needed to do to keep his spot in that bullpen. All right, game three now. Our lineup in the outfield from left to right: Witt, Varsho, and Springer. Around the horn, third to first: Matt Chapman, Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio at the start at second, and Vladimir Guerrero at first. Alejandro Kirk is back in at catcher, and our DH is Brandon Belt. Our pitching matchup this game: Jose Barrios versus Bailey Oliver. Uh, Dustin, I think I'm starting to get interested in Barrios starts and what he can do as he's having a lot of great outings of late.
Yeah, he figured something out. You know, whatever it was that was plaguing him last year, he seemed to corrected it. And, he's kind of back around the old Barrios. I mean, mid three, high three ERA, a pretty consistent guy. Um, and just giving the ball club a chance to win. That's all you want to see about from him.
So the Twins starter Bailey Ober gets this game underway with his first pitch at 2:12 p.m. Eastern time. And this game was a relatively low scoring game. But bottom of the first, we have a Vladimir Guerrero with a leaping catch at first base to end the inning. I thought that was worth a mention as Vladdy's defense is always uh, he always represents in that department.
That's for sure. Yeah, he's surprisingly athletic. I think or well, it shouldn't be a surprise to us, anyways. But I think if you weren't used to watching him, you somebody would be surprised. I think by his uh, leaps, and my wife the other day when we were watching the game was like, "Oh, he did the splits," and I'm like, "Yeah, he does that all the time."
Yeah, he definitely does. Top of the second, we do have our first scoring of the game. Matt Chapman walks. There's a Varsho single. And then I would say the swing of the game, not a very strong swing, but it was still the swing of the game where Alejandro Kirk hits a 2 RBI bloop single to left center field. And Varsho actually scores all the way from first on this play. And I was actually scratching my head a little bit trying to figure this one out. But once again, with this was with two outs, and so
Yeah,
the runners are starting, and you give Dalton Varsho a little bit of a head start, and he is quick.
that's for sure. Yeah, I was surprised too. I was like, "How is he running on that play?" But yeah, it was like, "Oh, yeah, 2 outs. Okay, you're just running anyways." And got a little lucky with the dive on the outfielder not working out, and hey, you're on the board.
Well, it was that Bermuda Triangle that
Yeah,
you remember the Newmarket Men's Baseball League. That Bermuda Triangle was sizably bigger, but
much.
it yeah hits into that area often touch some green.
Yeah, yeah,
Bottom of the sixth now, we have our first pitching change of the game where Trevor Richards replaces Jose Barrios. Barrios's pitching line: 5.2 innings pitched, 4 hits, 0 earned runs, 5 walks, and 5 strikeouts. Dustin, another great outing by Jose Barrios.
yeah. A really good start from him. 5 Ks, one per inning. That's pretty good. I don't like to see the 5 walks, but nothing really hurt him, and he put up 5 zeros. So hey, more can you ask?
Well, and to be honest with Barrios, I think that's really the stat line that I'm watching is his earned runs because he does often strike out at least a batter an inning. The
Hmm.
walks will kind of fluctuate a little bit, but with 5 walks and 0 earned runs, I think that's a pitcher that has some confidence that he can pitch out of some difficult situations.
Yeah, it has been sort of a problem for him, those runaway innings. I mean, we talked about it a little bit before in terms of, you know, even with his poor sort of performance on the sort of stat line numbers last year, he did get some decent wins under his belt, and he was able to, you know, pitch enough to keep the Jays, in the game such that they could overcome his um, earned runs that he would give up. And so you're right. I think if he can limit those, um, he's going to have a lot of success this year.
So we have a couple more pitching changes. Swanson then comes in the bottom of the seventh to replace Trevor Richards. And later we have Romano coming on to replace Swanson. But in stark contrast to game number two, Dustin, the bullpen really did a good job in this game.
Yeah, this is the kind of shutdown you want to see. 3 innings. I think they each got 3 strikeouts. There was only one walk given up by Richards, and I think a hit. Something Swanson. Something happened with one batter for him. I forget what it was, but yeah, I mean they struck out the side and closed the game out. Again, put up some zeros. Uh, that's all you can ask for.
I like donuts, Dustin. I like donuts.
Donuts.
Yeah. So the game does end 3-0. Our winning pitcher, the aforementioned Jose Barrios, losing pitcher Bailey Ober. Barrios is now 5-4 with a 3.86 ERA and a 1.26 WHIP. I think that WHIP is up a little bit, but that ERA is starting to be right where we want Barrios to be.
Yeah, he's coming along nice and smooth. And like I said, I think at the start of the year, if he can put a 3.5 on the year, I'd be more than happy. And I think he's at 3.86 or something. So he had a little bit of struggles early on, and he's bringing that down slowly.
Jordan Romano gets his 12th save of the season, and the Jays go on to win the series 2-1. Dustin, let's talk about our player of the series. I think we are both in agreement as there is a very obvious pick this particular series.
Yeah, both been flowing this series. I think he's how many? He hit 3 home runs or 2?
So
What's the
his
stat
stat,
line? I'm sure you
his
got it
stat
there.
line, I have 2 runs, 7 hits, 6 RBIs, and 2 home runs.
There you
Now,
go.
he also leads the majors with 78 hits and is second in the majors in average with 338. So he is quickly becoming the straw that stirs the drink. I think since probably last September, he's been that way, but he's really been the batter that we can count on in most series to be there and swing the bat well.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of a quiet leader there too on the field in the clubhouse. He's not the big rah-rah guy, but you can see that um, he just goes about his daily business with a lot of seriousness and a lot of just dedication. So, and it's working out for him. So I'm hoping that rubs off on some of these guys.
So the Jays are now 28-26. They remain last in the AL East, but they now come home following an off day on Monday and face the Milwaukee Brewers in a 3-game series. Dustin, the Brewers are first in the NL Central. So I'll let you give your thoughts in a moment, but their record being a first place team, 28-25.
Oh, it's a familiar looking record. I wonder how you do that. I wish. Um,
Well, why don't you give us some thoughts on the Brewers and what we might see in the series?
um, they're tough to figure out for me. I think, uh, they're a pretty good team, and I think they've been predicted to be in the position that they are in this Central. Um, but I just think um, they're light on pitching, and so I'm wondering if they're kind of in a similar boat in terms of relying on their bats to really pull them forward. I know that they've had, at least I've heard, they've had a fairly rough going of recent. I think they lost a big game recently, like 15-1 against the Giants or something. So I'm hoping that we're hitting them kind of at a point where they're struggling and we can pull together another series win.
You have been listening to Station here on Organized Chaos Sports. We will be back on Friday to discuss the 3-game home series versus the Milwaukee Brewers. If you enjoyed this episode, we ask that you share it with one friend that you think may enjoy it as well. Thanks for listening, and until next time.